All right, who is in the mood for another CIRF report? We have a new moon in Cancer this week that we'll talk about in addition to a plethora of other stellar alignments. This is for the week of the 13th through the 19th of July, 2023. Let's go surfing, and I would like to show you what influences. This is the live chart. Live chart on July 5th at 10:49 a.m. Central Daylight Savings Time. Doing this report with 3 squares off to my ruling sign of Uranus. So it puts a lot of focus and pressure on my ruling sign in Taurus. So with that, Mercury still showing some opportunities and still in a combust state with the sun. So with that, here's our summary slide for today. This is for the influences, and then towards the end, we're going to do a summary slide for the solution. That, to me, is the most important thing to remember for myself, but it's also important to know what to expect in terms of feeling, because underlying every single behavior is an emotion, is a feeling. It's the primary motivator. So we need to look at what the influence is going to be. And the I-Ching says clinging like fire. And that is not a fire sign kind of a thing. It's actually much more of a water sign. If we're trying to correlate I-Ching and the astrology, we're looking at more of interconnectivity, so of interpersonal kind of affairs. And we'll get into detail about what that means. But it's a direct correlation to not just the new moon in Cancer, but the Venus and the Pisces aspects. All the water signs are highlighted in today's report, and that's where this clinging like fire is coming from. But interpersonally, I think what we're looking at is moods, because the dream bot is showing connection, getting stuff done, and then feelings. But feelings and connections could be grouped into one separate thing. I'll show you that here in a second. Slide was way too complex, so I just simplified it. And this is what you get: connections, feelings, and getting stuff done. That's a Mars, and even some other aspects on Mars, opposed Saturn specifically, that both talk about clinging like fire, but also getting stuff done. So it's a tight, congruent chart. And obviously in the astrology, the top highlight on Monday is on the 17th of July, the new moon in Cancer. But I mean, there is a lot here. And ultimately we'll get to the kind of a crescendo on this particular Leo square Taurus aspect. So there's a lot of Leo energy squared off to or 90 degrees from the Taurus energy, and talk about what that means. But a high congruency score overall. I think we're looking for feelings and emotions, interconnectivity, all things Cancer, of course, but all things water signs in astrology. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome to all you new subscribers. It brings me great pleasure to highlight today's Best Comment Award goes to our good friend Milos. Thanks, Chris, as always. Love and light. Hey, back to you, Milos. Thanks for that comment, but thanks for everybody's comment. Great showing this week, and it helps the algorithm. And just a reminder where we are, about halfway into our overall eclipse cycle. Yeah, we're not in the eclipse season, but that cycle still lasts until October 14th. All these things serve that purpose. And this week it's a Cancer new moon. So we've got to talk more about this stellar alignment and the influences. But first, the dream bot. All right. So yeah, when I had this chart, I had so many lines. It was just too hard to even read it. So I just boiled it down to the general gist. And I'm not going to do this from now on. I do like having the lines and the different colors of arrows, is which I typically do, but it was just way too much. So connections, These transitory feelings probably could be grouped into one, because whenever you have interpersonal situations or two people in the same room or the same space, you are going to have some sort of interchange in emotional or feeling states. And then we have the getting stuff done thing, which really, to me, makes a lot of sense from the Mars aspects. Yeah, that's it. We have some interesting linguistics. Woke is back. That one, it looks like it's established a new baseline, probably maybe 100% higher than it used to be maybe 3 months ago. And it seems to be staying pretty close to that, but we had a recent spike. So that's why woke is back. But it's not higher particularly than the new baseline. It's took a dip a little bit, and now it's back. All right, so for what it's worth. All right, back to the astrology. And we're looking in between. This is July 2023, looking in between these two black vertical lines. And the biggest highlight there is the new moon in Cancer on the 17th. A couple things, quite a few things go exact. Of importance, we have the Venus in conjunct Neptune goes exact in the middle of our week. And then on the new moon day, Mercury and Jupiter in a square goes exact. So, we got a lot of problems on Mercury in Leo, Mercury in a square, and kind of a problematic thing. So mind still, it's just harder to think. So what that leaves us open to is probably a lot more emotion. So Thursday, and that's on top of just the whole Cancer energy. So Thursday, let's get started. 13th. This is just midday. This is just a general overview. Lots of spaghetti lines. Let's try to make some sense of this. Here's what were the energies that are vying for your attention this week, in no particular order. The first one, because I've mentioned it quite a bit, is this Mars oppose Saturn, and it's getting a lot tighter. They're only in a 5-degree orb currently. So this is, the Mars is in Virgo, fresh into Virgo, very early Virgo. So disciplined duties, there's this should thing. It's cleaning up after the party and recognizing how much things that you need to clean up or whatever. So there's this should in terms of working and doing, but there's opposed to Saturn, which could be like the lack of connection or the lack of interpersonal or hardship, hard to relate. These kinds of themes inside of Saturn and Pisces oppose Mars. So what that means is there's this probably feeding off of each other. So the lack of interconnectivity makes you focus a little bit more on it, which produces a discomfort that probably just makes you want to go off on your own and do things. Now, this interpersonal theme that we have in the I-Ching, the clinging like fire, is just all over this chart. So Venus square to Uranus, and Venus is just the interpersonal planet. So relationship and finances is going to have a lot more focus than normal, a lot more pressure than normal, and change. Then we have Mercury square Jupiter. This is the pressure to think positively. And then remember, Mercury in a fall state in Leo tends to be a little bit more overconfident and maybe childlike, curious, but things are harder. It's harder to think. It's harder to rationalize. We do things faster than we think, impulsive. And then with the square over to Jupiter, it's the pressure to think positively, optimistically, expansively, especially in a Taurus sign. Jupiter in Taurus is about worth and the finer things. And so it's really positive on the finance side and the worth side, but everything's hard. It's hard to think that way right? So if you're having a hard time with finances and where the world's headed, there's a lot of this alignment that's either exacerbating it or causing it. Then we have Venus in conjunct to Neptune, and this is a early sign of wrong one. Relationships and finance adapting to fantasy. The in conjunct is adapting, and it's not one-sided, so it's not just relationships and finance adapting. It's also your fantasies and imaginations and dreams that are adapting to the way that your relationships are, your state of your finances. And then I was going to be talking about the early signs. We talked about this last week, but it's worth at least mentioning. So deeply, so subconsciously, the Uranus trine Pluto, it's just massive change. But this is the long haul, so we're talking like 3 years, and this will go out of a trine with some retrogrades that are going to happen in those next 3 years. But ultimately, it takes 3 years to get a perfect trine from Pluto to Uranus. And we're talking massive transformation and change. And paradoxically, in there, it'll be a air sign trine because of the progress that both of those planets will make before they finally go perfect on the trine. Whew. All right. And, we still didn't talk about all of the alignments. And most of those that I mentioned will be throughout the week. Let's see. So the next one we're talking about is the Sun opposed Pluto, and this is about a 7-degree orb, so it'll get much tighter towards the end of our CIRF week. But this is big. So we've got protecting self, got Sun in Cancer versus the power to achieve. We've got Pluto in Capricorn, and that's similar to the other opposition that we just talked about with the Mars and the Saturn. It highlights the Sun part is the interpersonal, because it's a water sign with Cancer, nurture, those kinds of themes, protect. And we have Pluto then with the Earth sign, the power to get stuff done, the power to achieve your goals, or the transformation of how you go about climbing the mountain of any sort. And if I'm taking time to itch myself, I got sugar bites all over me. It's annoying. But it is what it is. So we've got Sun sextile Uranus, and that proposes an opportunity in all those things Sun, so all those things Cancer. And we have a waning crescent moon, which is in Gemini, going to be adaptable, but most importantly, in this lunar cycle, in where it is in the cycle, it's about rejuvenating, relaxing, not getting a lot of stuff done. So that flies in the face of this energy from Mars in Virgo. It's going to be encouraging you, and this kind of feel this discomfort of having to get stuff done. But I'm telling you, the dominant energy here, the dominant suggestion in terms of how much output we should be putting out is the waning crescent moon. So relax, rejuvenate, sit back. We're not even designing our new moon stuff, although it's not wrong because there's that Sun trine Neptune as well. So there's kind of an opportunity to dream about your next new moon goals, your next Cancer new moon goals. But that's not the emphasis with that lunar cycle, okay, right now. It will be here in a couple days. Saturday, the 15th, we have a lot more inconjuncts. They're all over the place. We have oppositions, so there's kind of an out of balance or a conflict there. But we have change. We have relationships are adapting. The way you do things are adapting. transformations and the way you hold your control and power are changing. Let's see, there's limitations and challenges. There's mind. There's the emotions. All these are adapting. So it's an adapting day. This is kind of the height of it, Saturday, the 15th, with all the other aspects that we mentioned. And then we begin. This is an 8-degree orb, so it's very light compared to the other strong energies, is Mars trine Jupiter. And so this can be excessive. So you got a risk of workaholism. If it's more healthy, it's just going to make one happy or make one very optimistic to get some practical things done. Practical because it's earth signs. And if you do that right in a healthy way, in a balanced way, especially balanced with the very end state of our Cancer moon, which is a waning crescent, about to be a new moon, this is really time to relax. So if you're going to do anything, just make sure it's something that you really like to do, and not very intense, easy, so you can kind of, there's no safety concerns. You just do it, and it brings you joy, right? Those would be the good activities for July 16th. And then we get into the new moon, and this is at 1:32 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time. New moon in Cancer, 24 degrees, almost 25 degrees, 24 degrees, 56 minutes in Cancer with all these aspects. There's an opposition to Pluto, and that's a 5-degree orb. Challenge to transform or sacrifice your power to achieve. There's it's still that the power continuum, control drama, and then we have the trine over to Neptune, which is perfect for our new moon. So because at the new moon, what we want to do, if you want to have some sort of a ceremony, is to design your month. It's roughly a month, 29 plus days in this lunar cycle. And at this time, it doesn't have to be right exactly at 1:32 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time, but the closer it is to the new moon, the more powerful it is. And you're imagining the Cancer goals. And the Cancer goals for this lunar cycle would be things about home. And you can be changing home. You can be improving the home. And again, it's not right now. You're imagining that goal within the next, I'd say 2 weeks up to the next full moon. That would be the period of time with the most energy that you're putting out. It's going to be in about 2 weeks, but now you're envisioning that goal. So matters of home, what are you going to protect? What do you want to nurture? Hopefully you're spending all that time designing something that you're really passionate about along those types of items, genre. Okay. And it may or may not be more people-oriented, but I would say that the nurturing and the protecting doesn't have to be about people. But I think with this water sign, especially with the trine over to Neptune, with water dominance here, it's going to be probably best to include some sort of protection, nurturing, home item to include how that relates to other people, the interdependence, i.e. clinging like fire of the I-Ching 30 would probably be best there. And Tuesday, the 18th, July 18th, we have the pressure is building. This is the Leo versus Taurus. And so kind of got like a dominance going on. It's like a war. These are, it's not uncommon for Leos to want to be the leaders, but you have the bull-headed bull and doesn't want to give up, it will stand his ground. And so we've got one type of fighter, if you will, or one type of dominance versus another very earthy type of dominance. And so that'll be interesting, but lots of pressure in the air. You see the inconjuncts are pretty much gone. You still have the oppositions, but a whole lot of squares. And it's more than just Venus square Uranus. It's like Leo versus Taurus. So we've seen that before. Can't remember. I didn't go back and look at when we had that energy so that you could go back in your calendar. So sorry about that. But we have seen that. It's not the first time in 2023. All right. Well, we have the I-Ching, and this is hexagram 30. It's through the webs of our interdependence. We see that everything is related. Each thing to the other. Awareness of your attachment to other people is key that opens the door to knowing your true peace in the world. No human is an island. And that really speaks to all of the water emphasis, the Venus emphasis, but also the weakness and the hardness and the mental acuity this week. Thoughts, cognitions are much harder, which means it leaves us open to emotion, which that's the other half of the interconnectivity continuum. So it is at the beginning that one needs to compose oneself. All seeds, as seeds are planted, so shall they grow. Do not begin a new project without careful consideration. And that's perfect. It's a perfect line in a perfect I-Ching reading that talks about, or that includes, the lunar cycle that we are in right now. Because even in the beginning of the week, in the CIRF week, in the beginning of the week, the first half, we have a waning crescent. Then we have the new moon on Monday. Then we have the waxing crescent. So all of those are not a lot of doing. You'll start to imagine once that new moon begins. And that's the energy you want to create your 2-week-ish goal, having to do with Cancer type things. And so here's what I just talked about. Probably should just set everything on this energy graph, but it's the mood and interdependence. It's the water sign energy, but supported by a lot of the other energies. And so we have a heightened state of mood and interdependence with each other, relatedness. Even if you're feeling the opposite, like where, some of you will feel empty or alone, and that's still just the heightened energy, the desire for interdependence. Some of you will be saturated and taxed around other people, and so you want to kind of get away. That's still the interdependence kind of regime. All right, before we transition to the solution, just summarize. And let me change this. Here we go. All right, here we go for the overall influence. You can see the moods that are possible here. It's not a negative or positive thing. It's just emotions will be strong. The feelings will be undeniable. And you'll see them in some sort of mood. Now, it won't be like, may not be a fast changing mood, might be, but it's just mood. The emphasis is on interdependence and how people are feeling. The new moon in Cancer initiates a lunar cycle for matters of home, nurturing, protection, and maternal instincts. With the hodgepodge of other stellar influences, especially Mercury in Leo, which creates a weakness in the mind, this new moon is expected to increase emotional sensitivity and overall moodiness, hence psychologically emphasizing our interconnectivity, as I explained before. So I'll prepare the solution, but let's get back to our summary, or the details. Details of the solution are inbound. We put the change line 1, change that to a yin, and we get 56, the Wanderer. Now, of you regulars out there, you realize that we had the Wanderer last week. So this is no different. It's flexibility, it's be a good traveler. And even if you're not traveling, a lot of you are, but for those of you who aren't, it's about having a mindset of curiosity. We're headed into new times. We're just new everything, even a new lunar cycle. So if you are entering a new environment, be sincere, flexible, undemanding rather than stubborn. That'll be interesting. Suggestion with the Taurus square Leo energy. All right, so let's put the new moon into our calculator. We transition into the solution. So we're going from tropical, and we aligned and figure out what in the sidereal is applicable, and that's Gemini. Gemini is adaptable for one, and it's hexagram 62 of the Rave mandala. That's human design. 62, what does that mean? Well, that's the preponderance of the small. Caution, patience, and detail produce excellence out of limitation. Boy, does that not sound just like Mars and Saturn? We have line 5, metamorphosis. When excellence is achieved, action is necessary. Now, I'm going to read this and think about the moon cycle and where it is this week. Reaching out to others to share, symbolized by the moon's phases as it moves from darkness, new moon, to eventually sharing fully its light. That's the full moon. But the understanding that only when the details are complete can action or expression be initiated. And how that applies to us is you don't have any, towards the very end of our CIRF week, you're just starting to get some light on the moon, which indicates that there's more details about your particular lunar goals. And so that's the time that you can initiate. But I wouldn't initiate before then. And so the Rave mandala is totally in agreement with that. So let's go to our solution slide. All right. Here we go. Got the I-Ching that says the Wanderer. This is exactly like we had last week. It's just be yourself above all. Be flexible and open. Realize a lot of things are changing. Even if you're not traveling, it's a new environment. Things are changing. Rave mandala says metamorphosis, complete the details before initiating action. Make sure you really know what you're doing. And then Gemini is versatile and alert and witty and agile. So the Gemini and the I-Ching Wanderer are actually very well correlated with each other. And then we include this detailing. So here's the triangulation. As we continue as a species into uncharted territory, especially at the pivot point of a new lunar cycle, the solution overlap of adaptability is obviously very important. Above all, be flexible, be versatile, alert but open, and be less explanatory and more questioning. Now that can be a challenge to us Gemini or heavy Gemini influence people. So a little less communicative and a lot more listening and a lot more questioning, not in a controversial way, not in a pressured conflict way, but in a curious way. That was an almost perfect overlap between I-Ching 56 and Sidereal Gemini. The Rave 62 line 5 zooms in on the new moon and reminds us the importance of withholding action until after the full details have been ironed out, and even includes the direct command to wait for lunar light to appear in the sky before beginning any action. That's not just a metaphor. That is a very practical thing. So don't start working towards your new moon in Cancer goals for this lunar cycle until you at least start to see the waxing crescent moon happening towards the end of our CIRF week. It takes at least 24 to 48 hours to start seeing a little sliver of light from the moon. And then and only then, make sure then that you have your personal details done in how to get your goals met. And if you've got those requirements met according to the Rave Mandala, it's time to get started. So you could theoretically get started, practically getting started on your Cancer lunar goals actually this week. But next CIRF week will be the primary week to get those done. So this week we are to really sit down and get as many details about this month's objectives as possible. Measurable cancer goals, timelines, events required in the next 30 days. The statement that I plan to use is, I will make myself more comfortable in my own skin. This is kind of the individualized form of Cancer, is making my home or my human form to be more comfortable, protect itself, maybe even work on it. But you can take this a little bit further out if you want in your actual living home. You can define what your home is for this month and work on it. I will nurture and protect my Cancer goals. All right. And then the influence will be interconnectivity. We didn't notice a whole lot of emphasis on interconnectivity in the solution, but it doesn't mean you're going to be void of that. It's just that's not the emphasis in terms of solution and how to behave. It doesn't mean ignore it. I mean, the influence obviously is showing you that you're not going to be able to ignore it. So, but as far as solving it or fixing it, that's really up to you in terms of what you want to nurture and protect from the Cancer perspective. So, and it doesn't have to be home, but I chose to make it a extremely more of a personal thing, being more and more comfortable in my own skin, even with chigger bites. And then I don't know what my Cancer goals will be, but I'm thinking that I can kind of intuit that the home is the big one, and not just my own skin, but beyond that. So, all right, everybody. Appreciate you being here. I appreciate your help in sharing this message. Hopefully it was be of use for you. And let's go out and conquer what shows up. We'll see you next week. Namaste.